Okay, hi everyone and welcome. I'm Adam Berezin from MS Dynamics World. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's session, How to Ditch the Paper and Spreadsheets, Cloud-Based Employee Performance Management for Dynamics GP. The session is going to be presented by John Smith, who's the Director of Enterprise Business Solutions for Corporate Renaissance Group, and we're very happy to have him here with us today. So before we get started, I'd like to mention that you could submit any questions you have during the session through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen, and John will try to get to all of them at the end of the event. So without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter, John Smith.
Thank you all for joining today. We are, as Adam said, going to take you through employee performance management for Dynamics GP. And specifically our product, we focus on emPerform, which is a cloud-based employee performance management product. As Adam mentioned, I'm presenting today, just so you know my background. I've worked with Dynamics GP extensively for about the last 16 or so years, 16, 17 years, since Dynamics GP version 6. And around that time, shortly thereafter, we started emPerform. And I've also been involved in emPerform for almost as long. So I bring that perspective to today's demonstration. In terms of agenda items, what we're going to look at is just first off, what is this product? What is this process? What are we trying to achieve with it? And then what we're going to do is spend some time showing you how it works. We'll talk about the integrations as well, the GP in here. And that live demonstration takes the majority of the time we're going to spend together. And then we've reserved some time at the end for questions. So just as Adam said, if you have questions, please go ahead and enter them in the question pane, and we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the presentation today. So let me get started. Just a bit about us to start off. Really what our focus is helping organizations streamline and improve the performance management process. And if you're involved at all in employee performance management or you're reading any articles on it, this is one confusing topic these days. There's a lot of changes being made. Organizations are trying new and bold things. I think for many organizations, this process is a real struggle because there's not necessarily a right way to do it. And so, we come at this with, a lot of perspective on how we've helped organizations improve. And, we see a lot of challenges that come out. And challenges today in many organizations will focus on some or all of these items and even more. We see a lot of things like frequency of feedback. And, that one, without question, over the last 15 years, if I can point to one thing that's changed a lot in the performance management world, it's this idea that the once-a-year performance review just isn't cutting it. And we've got a new generation of workers and employees that want a greater degree of feedback. I think if you ask people across any organization, they're going to tell you that they want to hear about their performance more than once a year. There's also a lot of focus nowadays on goals and objectives. A belief that if we get aligned on goals and objectives at the beginning of the year, it's going to help the organization meet its targets, its metrics, KPIs, and other things that need to be tracked. And, so there's extensive focus now from many, many people we talk to on goal management. We also know that companies struggle with accountability and helping employees see their own accountability inside the organization. More voices in the process nowadays, really understanding that, this isn't the old-fashioned manager and employee relationship anymore, that, our working relationships nowadays are more dynamic. And, an idea that we should bring more people into this process. We also, see HR struggling quite a bit. HR struggling with the fact that they're left to run this process with all this paper that's disconnected and no way to get meaningful results out of it. And at the same time, juxtaposed against that, saying, hey, you guys, clean up the process, make it something that's easy to use, make it relevant for people, and make it effective for the management team. And so a lot of competing challenges here. With emPerform, we talk about some key benefits. We help with these challenges in many different ways. And certainly we talk about simplification and streamlining the process. You'll see that as we go through the demonstration today. If we get more specific, we're looking at things like, improving consistency and accuracy in the process, of course engaging users year-round, and we got lots of bells and whistles and ways and processes with which to do that. aligning organizational and team objectives, evaluating employees on job-specific criteria rather than sort of vanilla one-size-fits-all performance reviews, and giving both managers and employees effective tools to help complete the process in a way that makes it relevant and easy for them. We also talk more basically about completing things on time, getting the appraisals done on time, getting the check-ins done in an orderly basis, and really providing information for decision making. And I think at the end of the day, if we sit and look at this, we don't just measure things in life for the sake of measuring it. We measure things in life to take action. And in the case of performance management, the actions are usually related to compensation decisions. They're related to, promotion decisions and succession decisions. So there's a reason why we need this process to run effectively. And the great thing about having technology behind it is that you can capture the data, you can create reports and analysis and analytics to help you really make sense of those decisions. And so an important element and an important benefit to a product like this is the ability to gather those real-time metrics for decision making. Now, one of the most important benefits that we highlighted from the beginning is that we're getting away nowadays from this once-a-year performance management process, and with emPerform, we certainly help you move from that to an ongoing performance management process. And our conceptual framework looks something like this. At a very basic level, if we boil it down, we say there's 3 important steps. One is setting objectives and setting the plan for performance at the beginning of the cycle. And then encouraging all the check-ins during the monitoring steps, sort of between the setting stage and the evaluating stage. It's, while we're performing our jobs and doing our work, how are we keeping performance management top of mind? And in emPerform, we've got lots of ways to do this, from quarterly check-ins and ad hoc check-ins to continuous feedback to, monitoring goals and objectives. Our clients do all those sorts of things in here. And the idea is that if you've done those first 2 steps, when you get to step 3, the end of the year evaluation, we're all prepared for it. We can take the anxiety out of the process, and we can have we can bring value to that year-end discussion because we've been communicating all year long. Now, many of our clients move from performance appraisal into things like compensation planning, into things like talent review, and into things like succession planning. So these are all important elements in emPerform. So, really this is all about trying to bring people together into this process and make this process more effective for everyone. Now, emPerform itself was built with an all-inclusive, configurable, affordable, and intuitive and easy-to-use value platform, and we really try to bring together all of these elements in our software. To be very specific, emPerform includes and is centered around our flexible online appraisal solution. We also bring in ongoing continuous feedback and journaling, integrated 360 reviews, online survey capability, notification and alerts, and of course writing assistant and content libraries. There's a 9-box built in for talent identification, a compensation planning tool built in to link performance and compensation and allow us to make compensation decisions based on performance, and of course a great reporting and analytics story as we discussed. Specifically for Dynamics GP, we built an integration, and the integration between emPerform and Dynamics GP is a seamless integration. How it works is it updates emPerform with changes to the employee master records in Dynamics. If you're running Dynamics GP, you simply keep your employees up to date in the HR module, and any updates or changes that you make there will be automatically synchronized to emPerform. We also send back to GP post-appraisal results and any compensation results that we do inside emPerform. So here are some fields of information that are typical fields that we integrate. We show a few fields here from the employee master record, so things like the employee ID, the first and last name, the organizational credentials, division, department, location, position, the supervisor code. These are all things that we synchronize with GP to keep emPerform up to date. And of course, we can send back post-appraisal results. And if you're doing compensation in emPerform, if you're doing merit review, we can send back compensation results as well. Now, it's important to point out that we never, ever delete or purge data from emPerform. So it will always act as your performance management subledger. And so this is something that is very important for us as we look at Dynamics GP, because we can really think about keeping our employee record, really updated with all the information we ever require in GP. If we have to drill down and see, more details, we can of course do that. One thing as well I point out, at the end of a performance appraisal cycle in emPerform, we automatically create PDF documents of the appraisal, even though we don't get rid of the data. Many of our clients, many of our GP clients will include that PDF as an attachment in the employee review card as well. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do is switch over to the software and show you emPerform and sort of talk about how this works and how this process gets automated, let you look and feel emPerform and how it looks to an end user, how it looks to a manager, and how a simple process would work inside emPerform. So let's go ahead and take a look. First, I'm going to navigate over to my home screen. I've just logged into emPerform, and for the purposes of today's demonstration, I'm going to go through this, as somebody in the organization who's a manager. And very much like Dynamics GP, emPerform shares the same sort of security profiles, and that it's really a role-based experience. What you see on your screen depends on really who you are in the organization. Employees who log in may simply see a section in the appraisal that says My Appraisal, and that's what they work on. If you're in here as a manager or supervisor, you're going to have a team section because you're involved in providing feedback on other people in your team. We also have some additional functionality in emPerform related to compensation and survey, and if those modules are deployed and if you have a role in them, then you're going to see links in there to compensation and survey. We also include a continuous feedback tool, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Now, every name inside emPerform is linked to a profile, and this is something that I think many of our GP clients really like to have, because we're running GP in our organization. If we're running GP HR, we may or may not be using employee self-service. Employees might not have an ability to go in and really look at a profile for another employee they work with. So we've brought that into emPerform, and the interesting thing here is that when we think about the profile, it's showing fields of information that people can look up. You can search through the company directory and find someone. But the important part is that HR has control over the fields that appear on the profile, and those fields may be fields of information that we actually track in Dynamics GP. So we could bring skills lists in, education, organizational credentials. All of those things can appear here, and lots of flexibility to display what we want on that profile. One of the big advantages of the profile for managers is that when you dive down into your full profile view, it shows you all of the performance history related to that employee. So one of my favorite things in here is we look at Ashley, I can see her open appraisals, and I can also see her historical appraisals sitting in my view right away. So profile is an important part of emPerform and of the user experience that's here. I think in the context of really explaining appraisal, I want to step back to those three important steps we talked about in the beginning. We talked about sort of setting goals and objectives and setting a plan for performance at the beginning of the cycle. We talked about monitoring and check-ins, and then what it looks like at the end of the cycle. And I think for today it's going to make sense that we just take a look at those steps inside emPerform and show you what happens in a traditional scenario. So let's assume it's the beginning of the year and we're going in to do some goal setting. We're setting some objectives. As an employee, I may be involved in that process. And if I am, it's going to be as simple as clicking on my appraisal and opening it up to enter some goals and objectives. Now, when you open an appraisal in emPerform, the way the system works and is designed, at the top of the screen, it's going to show you the key milestone steps in the process. And of course, those are defined by every client. Those are different client by client. The idea right away here for the HR folks is that we want to be able to show that this is an ongoing process. And no better way to do that than put a visual timeline at the top with some due dates. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see different evaluation areas or sections, and these are the things that make up the performance appraisal form, okay? These would be, you know, the headers in the Word document, and usually our friends in HR have a pretty good idea of what they want to evaluate and how they want the form to look. Navigation is as easy as point, click, and type. I'm going to go over here to the goals section because that's what we're in here to do. It's the beginning of the cycle, and I'm going to go in and enter a new goal and objective. Now, before I do that, when I navigate to this page, one of the things we like to point out is that you, the client, have control over the layout of all these pages. You get to determine the language that's here, the instructions. You get to determine who navigates in here, who has access rights. At one point in the process, should they do certain things. So in this goal setting example, I've come in as an employee. HR's asked us to set up goals as SMART goals, and nicely they've given us some assistance, some video links here if I want to see more about SMART goal setting. You know, there's an article I can read on goal setting. I see as well that some goals have already been entered. HR has entered a company-wide goal on quality and safety, and if I click on that, I can see how that goal has been defined and what I'm trying to achieve this year as part of that group that's tracking the goal. I also have some additional goals my manager's entered on project proposals and tracking budgeting expenses. For me to enter a goal, I can do it one of two ways. I could click on Add from Library and look for a predefined corporate objective that I want to try to support, or the more common way is to enter a goal free-form, and that's by clicking the Add New button. And so I'm going to go ahead and enter a team goal here, and our team goal is going to be to implement a new employee performance management process in 2017. And we'll go ahead and make that goal specific, and we'd enter those specifics right here. We can link or align to an organizational objective, and it's just a small drop-down, but it's extremely important in the world of goal management. In fact, I think one of the biggest items in goal management is this level of alignment that shows how an employee's goal relates to an organizational objective. You can enter any of these in the list. You can update the list and make it specific to your own organization. And what we'll do here is we'll say, you know what, we're really here focused on investing in employee development. We're going to go ahead and link it to employee development, and we're going to put a due date on it. Say we're going to get this done by the end of the year, so December 31st. Now I can go ahead and save that. One of the things that's really nice for me as a manager, I've made this a team goal. I titled it team goal because I want to share it with some other people. I can click a button, and just like that, I can assign it to anybody who's one of my direct reports. And just at the click of a button like that, I've cascaded the objective, and it is now part of those employees' goal plans. Going forward, they're going to see it in there. Just like me, when they look at their goal page, they're going to see the team goal of implementing a new employee performance management process in 2017, and it will show that their manager has assigned it. The same way we set goals, we can set development plans. And development plans, you know, these could be learning and development initiatives, certifications, things we want to track. In fact, at the end of the day, on completion, we could think about going back and populating a skills list for an employee in GP. These are all the things we want to undertake and complete at a more personal level. So we've got things in here like attend an industry event, Excel training, and really what happens is you can come in and, you know, type in what you want to do. You can link or align. You can think about link or aligning it to competencies that could be developed or even put in a course or workshop. So the idea is that at the beginning of the cycle, we create a plan for performance. And usually the way the process goes, the employee and manager are involved in setting some goals, and then they get together and they meet about this. When they get together and meet about the process, it simply means, hey, I'm going to submit this to the next step and say that I've done my goal setting. I'm moving it on to my manager. I click a button, and my manager's automatically emailed. It lets my manager know that I've done my part in goal setting. It notifies them that it's their turn to go in and review and then set up a meeting to discuss the goals or objectives. So I think one of the big values here of emPerform is we keep everyone on track throughout the process. From the beginning to the end, the employee, the manager, and anybody else involved are being updated with email reminders. They're being prompted to do their next part in the process. And HR, of course, has oversight in terms of where everybody is and what step they're in. And this is an important element of automation, because again, if we go back to the core challenge, one of the core challenges for HR is managing this paper-based monster, right? So if we're not using software to do that, an automated tool like emPerform, it means we're chasing around emails and document attachments and Word docs all over the organization. So again, the streamlining of this is really nicely done through the workflow. It keeps everybody on track. Now, a couple small points here throughout the process. Users can come in and attach documents into emPerform, anything that is worthy of attaching so that you remember it at the end of the year. And of course, you can print a copy of your performance review report at any point in the process. When you run your review report, you can print right from this window, and of course, you can save a copy in these popular file formats of Excel, PDF, or Word. Again, just a standard part of emPerform in terms of all of our reports, you can go ahead and save those. So once we've done the goal-setting part of it, we say, okay, well, what comes next, right? And what comes next changes client by client. And what comes next to me is probably the defining characteristic of whether this performance management process will be successful or not. It's also the one that's the most difficult to change inside an organization that hasn't been doing it. So this, of course, is what we call monitoring and check-ins, right? And how do we move an organization who hasn't been doing it into one that does it going forward? And there's a few different ways we can do this. We can be sort of ad hoc, or we can be structural about it. So let's talk about this from a little bit of a structural perspective. We could say, employees and managers, go in and update the status of your goals. We can have the system send an email out, and every month or every quarter, employees and managers are getting reminded to update the status of their goals. This could be followed by a meeting, perhaps a quarterly meeting to review progress. And if they were doing something like that, you can see the great thing inside emPerform is it's going to notify you, it's going to encourage you with what you need to do with the next step. You can see here on Karen's, it says monitor the status of goals. On May's, it's schedule a meeting to review goals. If we are doing a formal quarterly review, it could look like this. I could perhaps come in, and during the year I've met with Samantha quarterly, and we've just updated some check-in notes and progress throughout the year. So, we just want to have a little, chronological listing of the discussions we've had during the year, what we're going to focus on for the next quarter, what we accomplished in the prior quarter. These are the types of things we might want to document when we have those check-in meetings. Now, another way we can approach sort of this monitoring stage is one that, it's a little less structural, but it actually may be something that's popular to do and something that's easy to implement. It's to start, encouraging people to provide feedback. And feedback, continuous feedback in emPerform means using our tag module. And let me tell you a little bit about how tag works here. The idea is that with tag, you can come in as an end user and you can take journal notes at any point in time. Journal notes are private and confidential to the person making it. So the idea is you come in here and you enter a journal note. And the journal note is one that is simply one you come in and enter. I can enter it here. I can actually file it against an employee name so that at the end of the year I can look, in this case, for all the journals I've taken on Ashley. Ashley's never going to see these journal notes unless I determine I want to share them with Ashley. By taking a journal note and filing it against Ashley's name, it remains private and confidential to me, the writer of the journal note. So again, we encourage everybody to use this. This is observations, things we want to remember. It could be stuff about yourself. It could be things you want to remember for your own performance review at the end of the year. The flip side of journaling, and the other option here, and the one that I guess is the big one that a lot of organizations nowadays are really, really investing in, is what we call continuous feedback. And here's how it works. Continuous feedback means you're actually going to provide feedback to the individual. In this case, I'm sending feedback directly to Ashley, okay? I'm going to type in my feedback. I'm going to send it to her. We have an option that I could send it to her, CC her manager on that as well, and I click send. And so what happens is Ashley gets an email and says, Ashley, you've been tagged. Please click here to read the feedback. And when she clicks on that link, it opens up her feedback wall. It opens up her tag wall. And the tag wall lists out, the various pieces of feedback she's received. In fact, inbound feedback will come in as locked, meaning that it's up to the receiver whether or not they want to share it with their manager. When you send a tag, there's only two people that know about the tag: the employee who sends it and the receiver who gets it. Now, if we have the option to say, hey, let the manager also receive it, then there's a third party, which would be the manager. At that point in time, if the manager hasn't been notified, the employee has the ability to unlock the tag and share it with the manager. And so the idea here is that throughout the year, employees are getting feedback from their peers, feedback that they've been tagged. The way tag works and the way it's being used in many organizations is it's this, I saw you at your best today. It's positive in nature, and it brings a nice positive influence to performance management. We also catalog and use this feedback as support for ratings and comments at the end of the cycle. When we think about the monitoring phase of performance management, many of our clients actually use tag just to document their quarterly check-ins. They don't want to get into big official forms with specific boxes they got to fill in. They just have a meeting, type up the notes and tag, and send it to the employee. Then they both have a record of the fact, date stamped, we had this conversation, this is what we discussed. And of course, you can use these in the performance review at the end of the year to support your ratings and comments. So let's take a look at how that works. We get out of that monitoring step. We set goals and objectives. We've gone through the year doing our quarterly check-ins. We've done goal updates. We've sent continuous feedback to others. We've taken some journal notes. We get to the end of this cycle, and we say, now what? Well, now what means we're going through doing the performance review. And in many cases, most cases nowadays, most organizations have the employee involved in some respect. Many of our clients have employee self-assessment as a formal step in the process. Many have manager and additional levels of management involved in reviewing the performance review. And here's how this looks. We'll go ahead back to the home page, and inside the home page, we're going to go in and look at Ashley's review. And when we navigate over to Ashley's review, you can see a note here that says, please complete the employee's appraisal. It means Ashley's already gone and done hers. So if I click on that appraisal and open it up, I can see that Ashley's gone through the steps a couple of different ways. One is I can see the overall rating she's provided, and I can also see up here at the top of the screen that the steps have been completed. Now, what I'm going to do as a manager is simply navigate over to the goals page, and I can start entering my ratings and comments. It's as simple as coming in and saying, I'm going to go back to those goals we set at the beginning of the year, and I'm going to provide a rating and comments. And I can go ahead here and type my comments. Now, if I want to remember back to the specifics about the goal, I can click on the information bar and see the specifics that are listed there. I can also click on the employee information section to read how the employees really progressed through the year, how they've rated themselves, any progress comments they've provided in year-end comments. And I simply go ahead and move on to the next item and go ahead and give my ratings and comments. And again, as we go through this process, you can flip back and forth between objectives. As you move forward, it automatically saves the information on the screen. So it's a really nice and easy experience for the manager. If we look at something like competencies, we'll navigate over there and we'll show you a few different things we can do as well as ratings and comments. If I go ahead and click on this communication competency, I'll look at my rating scale, and many clients would struggle with this. In the area of communication, what's the difference between meets, exceeds, and outstanding? Well, to make life easier for them, we have a writing assistant. Click a button, and the software will show you sample ratings and sample comments at each of those rating levels. These can be used to help standardize the ratings, create a sort of effective, fair platform for ensuring a standard and fair ratings across the board. It also helps managers get started with their own comments. So we'll go ahead and click exceeds, and it enters the comments right in the box. I can take those comments and change them and personalize them a bit for Ashley if I want to, and I can keep going back to that. One of the other things that's important about the writing assistant, we include ways to improve there. So if we're really here focused on improving the performance management process, not just automating it, if we're focused on improving it, then thinking about things like coaching assistance and writing assistance is extremely important, okay? It's something that, really, really helps the users and it helps the process. All right, so as we continue through this, we'll say we've gone ahead, we've entered our ratings, we've entered our comments, but what about tag? Well, we took all those tags throughout the year. If you want to, you could allow employees and managers to search those tags and support their ratings and comments with tags. So I'm looking at communication. I remember, in this case, Ashley's Lunch and Learn was so well done. That's a great feedback from Kim. I want to include that in here in communication because it just shows, again, some support for why I'm giving Ashley an outstanding rating in this area. And I'm going to go ahead and just continue through providing those feedbacks. We also do some more sophisticated things in MPerform to help with the process. So, for instance, at certain rating levels, we can require a comment. If you look at this rating scale, in the rating elements of 1, 4, and 5, if you were to select those, it means that the comment box becomes required, okay? You can't just give the rating without providing a comment. And so we've actually got that here as well as some additional functionality that allows us to make certain areas of the form required at different points in the process so that when you go through it, you have to fill in the required areas. And we often see in our larger clients that, this is an important element because when you start having thousands of employees, it's impossible for somebody in HR to read thousands of appraisals. We have to have a mechanism to ensure everybody has completed the required parts. And so that functionality is available as well just to help with due diligence in the process. So as we've gone through this process, we've provided ratings. What happens with them? Well, we have a lot of sophistication in our rating scale. First of all, the system's going to auto-calculate the overall score based on the ratings that have been provided. That is really the end result of your creation. You determine the rating scales, the number of levels, and the sort of value of each of those levels. You get to say in terms of your performance appraisal, you get to give weights to different sections, and the system will auto-calculate a score. I'm showing you the score on this page. This is a popular way to do it, but there's a huge element out there of organizations that say, we don't want to rate people with numbers and scores. So we want to move to, text-based, adjective-based, and certainly MPerform supports that. You can do text-based rating scales in here as well. For many organizations, one of the more popular things to talk about nowadays is how do we do appraisals without doing ratings at all? And this is something that's come up recently. It's new. Deloitte has made a lot of noise out there in terms of how they've done what they call a ratingless appraisal. So it's focused on commentary and feedback and check-in. But at the end of every sort of quarter and certainly every year, they take the pulse of the organization to see where people are at by asking 4 questions. And those 4 questions look like this. So they would say to everyone, to every manager, answer these 4 questions. We don't need ratings on the employee. We need answers to 4 questions. Given what I know about this person's performance, and if it were my money, I would award them the highest possible compensation increase. And, we might put an agree to a level of agreement scale on that. Given what I know of this person's performance, I'd always want them on my team. This person is at risk of low performance. This person is ready for promotion today. 4 simple questions with answers, and that's what they use as a rating scale. So there's lots of different ways we can do ratings, and I think this really points to MPerform's flexibility. Our job as a software vendor here is to fit into your process. It's to fit into your vision and what you want to achieve. Once we've gone through the process in MPerform, there's lots of different things we do with it. And, I want to just talk a little bit about output because it's extremely important. A couple of things here. So for starters, throughout the process, at any point in time, you can come in and check progress on your team, how they're doing, are they on track, is everybody meeting the deadlines in the process, and simply navigate over to one of the dashboards here that shows you the progress people are making. And if you've got somebody here at the end of the year and you got somebody who's still in the employee self-assessment phase, you'd be saying, okay, Kim, why are you still in employee self-assessment? I need to get that appraisal over. And you can appreciate as you have a bigger team, this becomes more meaningful. These dashboards also give you line of sight view so that if you're an executive, you can see everybody sort of within your span of control. And so as an executive, even a CEO, even the head of HR, you're going to have a view into where everybody is during the process. A couple of other things we talk about in terms of output. One of the things that's important to talk about is 9-box. And 9-box is an element in MPerform. It's typically used with succession, but more and more we're seeing it used as a calibration tool. So following the performance appraisal process, we basically take a group of employees and we put them into a 9-box. And what we do here is we're comparing performance and potential. This is the sort of standard that's out there. And the idea is that if you're in the top right corner of the box, you're considered a high-performing, high-potential employee, somebody we can focus on, developing to take on greater responsibility in the organization. Our folks in the middle are doing a great job for us every day, and fortunately, no one in the bottom corner. We can create these 9 boxes in MPerform. We can share them with relevant people who should see them. So if it was a department 9-box, we'd share it with that department's manager. If it's everybody in the organization, maybe we share it with the management team. You can put filters in here as well. So let's say we have some qualifying questions. Does this employee demonstrate leadership ability? Well, I only want to see people in the box who rated yes. Click yes, and all of a sudden we have 11 people in the middle, not 22. If I go up here to number 1, I see Cassidy is high performance, mid-potential, high potential, mid-performance, and I can click on Cassidy's name and go back and read more about her as we look at her profile. So a lot of people struggle with this because they say, well, that's a great output. We'd like to get there. I can see how reviewing this would be useful before we do our compensation and merit review exercise. John, how do you guys get potential? How do you guys get a potential score? Well, let's just take a quick look at that. If we go back to Ashley's appraisal, you might have noticed on the left-hand side of the screen, we built a section in here called career planning. And the career planning section is really meant to give employees and managers the capability to look forward in the process, to look at not just the rear view mirror, but to look forward and say, where's this person going? Where can they add value in the organization? Can they take on more responsibility? Can they grow? And so we often encourage our clients to think about something like this. If we do something like this, if we measure something like this, then we can use that as a basis of understanding potential and use basically the answers to these questions to derive a score that feeds into that 9-box. And so that's how it works inside MPerform. Okay. At the end of the process, at the end of a performance appraisal process, really important to point out that for sign-off, many people wonder about this, that you simply click a button. And when you go to sign off, the system encourages you, requires you to answer some sign-off questions. And this, again, shows due diligence in the process that you've completed the steps that are required. So if we've gone through the appraisal process, hey, the management team's done some calibration, they've looked at the results, they're happy with how the ratings profiles come together across the organization, then typically what we would do is move into a compensation cycle. And MPerform comes with an integrated compensation module. The integrated compensation module allows you to develop and route compensation planning worksheets to the appropriate people in the organization for input and approval. Let's take a look at one and how it works. I'm going to go ahead and click on Compensation Review 2016. Inside Compensation Review 2016, when it opens up, we're going to see a list of employees. And the employees in this case are listed in front of me, my direct reports. And you can see here that there's various pieces of information being presented to me. I can see the performance score coming through from MPerform's appraisal. That could also be presented as a text scale as well. I can see compensation information related to this group of employees. And in fact, all of those columns in green are pieces of compensation information that are related to their salary. So if we think about Dynamics GP, we're reading some information here from the salary pay code. And we've got their current salary listed. We're showing a midpoint to derive a compa ratio as well. You don't have to, but you can do stuff like that. We also have the system. emPerform is calculating a recommended increase. That recommended increase is calculated in one of two ways. In a very simple scenario, we align performance review results to percentage increases in a little screen you keep up to date in a grid that says, hey, if somebody gets 80%, they're eligible for a 2.5% increase. And the system goes ahead and calculates that for the manager. A second approach is to say, yeah, let's look at the performance review score, but relative to where they are today in their compa ratio. So relative to where they are at midpoint will determine the percentage award, a little more sophisticated. The manager can be given the opportunity to come in and actually make changes. So I can come in and make a recommended change, and you can see here as I do that, I can do it either by percentage or by dollars. It updates where I am versus budget at the bottom of the screen. Our friends in finance like this because they can sort of derive what the labor and salary budget is, and we can set up all of our employee groups with budgets so that before we go into the compensation planning process, we've sort of locked down the maximum increases that can be put away. So, you can think about this. There's a fair amount of information at your fingertips before you roll out and automate this very important and, in many cases, very expensive decision about compensation. I think the compensation side is probably the second biggest draw for our prospects behind automating employee appraisal. It's the fact that in many cases appraisal is being done really to give some substance to the compensation decision making, some evidence to the compensation decision making that's being done. And so the two go hand in hand. Now, emPerform also allows you to do bonuses. So you could think about, not only are we doing base pay adjustments here, we also want to go in and type in our bonus awards that we're giving to people. And the nice thing, again, is that it tracks it, it adds in, it shows you total new compensation. You might have noticed this originating versus functional toggle at the top of the screen. And for the folks on the call who are involved at all in Dynamics GP financials, you'll appreciate the fact that this works exactly the same way as it does in GP. Our multi-currency is set up to sort of mimic it in many ways. We say that every employee has a functional currency, so that is a home currency. If you're an employee, and you work in the United States, your functional currency would be US dollars. Organizations nowadays have offices all over the world, and it's possible we have an office in a different country. It's possible we have an office, in this case, in Canada, and we have an employee. I have an employee in my group who actually is paid in Canadian dollars. So in this case, Kim's functional currency is Canadian. But Kim's originating currency is Canadian. What I'd like to do is see everything in our functional currency. I'll go ahead and click in there and look at it, and we see it all listed in US dollars. So again here, really easy to set up everybody with their own originating currency and bring it together into one functional currency, and it follows GP's setup in how we do that. And now I see it all in US dollars. So the idea is that once I've gone through and provided my recommendations, I go ahead and save them, and I click a button at the top of the screen, and I route it through the workflow process to get the appropriate feedback from and approvals from executives or whoever else is involved in the process. One of the competitive differentiators of emPerform is that our compensation tool hierarchy, the approval hierarchy, need not be the same as what it is for appraisal. They can be totally different. And in fact, in 80% of the cases, they are totally different. We typically see lower levels of management involved in the performance review cycle and higher levels of management involved in the compensation review cycle. And if that's your case, certainly emPerform can support that. Now, I want to just touch on the fact that HR and executive get some important views into compensation. And the best way to show you that is through our compensation consolidation report. And I just quickly want to show you how that works. If I go back here and click on View Consolidation, I can actually go here and say, okay, I want to see all of the groups I'm involved in. I want to see an add-up of all these different groups where I've provided feedback or for whom I'm responsible. And as a CEO, this would be every department in the organization. As HR, this would be every department in the organization, so they'd be listed here. You simply click Select All. You're going to say All, and you'll go ahead and click the Preview button. And what this will build is a grid that consolidates this all together. I'm going to go ahead and just save that to Excel for you so you can see the output from this. And we'll go ahead and drop that report in and go ahead and open it up. And when we do, just zoom in here a little bit, all of the information we've collected inside the compensation module is tabulated here. It's consolidated for your view. So before any information goes back to the employee, before the decision is rubber stamped and finalized at the top end of the executive level, you can actually run a report as HR and say, here's where we're at, these are the way the numbers are coming together. And this is an important part. Once the compensation is approved, two things happen. emPerform can create a compensation statement that is provided back to each of the employees to tell them what compensation changes have resulted from the performance and compensation process. Many of our clients now are building those out into total compensation statements, so beyond talking about just base salary and bonus and variable, if applicable, they're talking about things like the benefits package and the other things the organization does to ensure the health and wellness of the employee. The other thing that happens, of course, is that we can take the compensation change results and send those back to Dynamics GP. So if you're using GP payroll, we're going to route that back automatically into GP. If you're using a third-party payroll provider, of course, you've got a great report that you can simply import back to those payroll providers to update the information that's there. And that's what we do with compensation. And, again, just another value-added feature in emPerform because all of this stuff is integrated and you get all of it as part of your emPerform license. The other thing I haven't touched on yet, but I just want to mention briefly, is that emPerform also comes with a survey tool. And the survey tool, we've got some examples here. They can do simple things like pulse surveys. So if I go ahead and click on this, popular nowadays, just a quick, easy, one-page survey to fill out, take the pulse of how things are going. Boom, ask some questions, send it out to your employees, they simply fill it out and click submit, and you're done. Our survey tool can also do things like 360 surveys. And 360 surveys allow you to design questions that that I would come in and answer for a series of people, a series of peers, and I'll go ahead and click through this, I'll read some instructions, and this will give you an idea of the different questions and answers that can be put into our survey tool. We'll go through this and click on them. You can see here, one of my favorites is this leadership grid that's done here. We also do this type of analysis and assessment as part of our appraisals. You can bring this in there, this type of competency setup, and do those reviews there as well. So emPerform comes with all of these things, whether it's appraisal, compensation, survey. By the way, our appraisal product includes a 360 component as well, and it's a great feature that's built in here. All of this is one integrated suite of functionality, and again, it ties right into Dynamics GP. I'm just going to switch back to close this out, just switch back to our presentation for a second, and we'll talk about some final things that come up here. One of the things is that for our clients, for our prospects that become clients, how we implement emPerform is always an important part of the decision-making process. And we've really focused here on having a really personal, great service-based experience and providing that to our customers. And so what this means is that we assign a dedicated business solution consultant who guides you through the implementation of emPerform. And we've been doing this so long, we've got a process down pat where we start with a kickoff call, and then we do a requirements call to figure out the employee fields and the process you want to run. We get that out of the way, and we document all of that, and then we meet with you. And we train you, and we train your HR team, and we build the performance appraisal and the compensation model as we train you. So it's a train the trainers approach. And we stay in touch with you. We make sure things are going well. We help you through the go live. We test, we go live. And we check in afterwards to make sure everything's going okay. Importantly with emPerform, we check in all the time. Importantly with emPerform, there's great training resources, from our online administrator training guide to video tutorials to lots of stuff that we do. And I think most relevant is the fact that after the fact, we provide free support to our clients with any questions you have about your process. With that, what I'd like to do is open the floor to any questions that we may have at this point in the process. And we'll go ahead and just take a quick look here to see what questions are out there. John, you mentioned that you guys have 360. Can you talk more about that? Yeah, so just to answer that question, we deliver 360 in two ways. One is through performance appraisal, and one is through our 360 survey tool. And really how you use that depends on the nature of the 360 you're doing and the types of questions you want to ask. A lot of folks nowadays do competency-based 360. If they're doing competency-based 360, they're saying, hey, here's the competency profile of the employee. Let's ask some peers to provide feedback. In that case, we recommend the appraisal-based 360 because the competencies are already there. In the case of where we've got, specific questions we want to ask, or we have a 360 process that is being run outside the appraisal process at a different point in the year, then we recommend the survey tool. In either of those scenarios, we provide back to the employee and manager some reports they can run that give them the feedback, that show them the feedback. And you've got lots of decisions there about who gets to see it and at what point in the process they get to see it. So we really ensure that it, again, works to how you want it to work, and that's the key. Another question here is about relationships in GP and how they affect emPerform. So the question is, suppose I go in and change the supervisor code on the employee in GP, what does that do in emPerform? That's a very good question, so here's how it works. You're going to go ahead in GP and update the supervisor code. Great, go do that. The following night, usually that's when we schedule the synchronized routine, emPerform will synchronize to GP. It will recognize that there's been a supervisor change, and on the employee master record in the administration side in emPerform, it will update the supervisor. Now, depending on your setup of emPerform, you have a choice. When we create appraisals and put people into appraisals in emPerform, we generally lock the relationship. We say, if you started this appraisal with a manager, that's who you're stuck with. However, you do have an option that says, you know what, if there's supervisor changes during the year, when GP updates the supervisor, and emPerform recognizes that, also go into the appraisal and update the supervisor. So at the end of the day, here's the thing. When you change that supervisor in GP, it's up to you whether or not you want it to update the appraisal, and that's the key to it. Lots of flexibility here to handle that. We've been doing this for so long. We got lots of clients on GP that are working with emPerform because GP just doesn't have this functionality inside the base product. So dealt with lots of scenarios like that. Thanks for the great question. What are the language capabilities? We've got folks out there that are saying we may require the appraisal to be done in English and Spanish. And the good news here with emPerform is that it is a multilingual application. I want to explain what that means. It means that you can take your English-based performance appraisal, you can run a report that will show you all of the text that you've put into it in English, and you save that to Excel. In column B in Excel, you're going to put the Spanish equivalent of what the English is in column A. You're going to go back to emPerform and import that report, and we will now have a Spanish language selection for employees in emPerform so that they can complete their appraisals in Spanish. I want to point out the base strings in emPerform, sort of like the tooltips and overall navigation and some of those elements. We do ship the product with predefined English, Spanish, and French strings, and we do have clients set up with multiple languages. Can we alter appraisals mid-year? Great question. The answer to that question is yes and no. Good question. So we generally don't encourage changing appraisals during the year, and really the change, to answer that question, it depends on the change you want to make. There is a capability to take the appraisals offline and change some of the setup. The caution whenever we do that is that if somebody's used a field that you're changing, then you're sort of, you're affecting their results by changing it. So we generally don't recommend it. What we'd recommend is creating a new appraisal and starting the person in that new form. But again, it depends on the situation to be very specific. And I think that's got it for our questions today. So I will go ahead and pass this presentation back to Adam, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks, John. Thanks so much. And thanks, everybody, for attending. I just want to let everybody know that we recorded the session, and we will be emailing everybody that attended and signed up for the session with a link. Once again, I want to thank John for taking the time to join us today, and I want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend, and hope you found the session enjoyable. And have a great day, everyone.